Hi everyone, it's Kendall here for week 5 of our Brackman Quilt Along, hosted by me. This week we have a rather interesting block, so without much further ado, let's get to it. Welcome to week number 5. What will this week's block be? Let's spin the wheel and we shall see. One, 6, 5, 3. Brackman ID 1653 gives us the 5 spot, which is another Nancy Cabot pattern, very similar, well, the same designer as our pattern from week 2. So this appeared in a syndicated column which was written by Loretta Lester Rising for the Chicago Tribune throughout the 1930s. The same patterns were also sold by Spinning Wheel Syndicate and the Progressive Farmer. So the Cabot column began in 1932 and continued through the decade, and the patterns were reprinted in the 1960s and 70s, but are currently no longer in print at this time. So let's go. The 5 spot. So here we are with all of our pieces and parts cut out as per the little chart there in the top right hand corner, and will be available on this week's download. You will notice next to blocks A and C that there's a little image there that looks like a half square triangle unit, and that's because what we need to do with our A and C squares is cut them once on the diagonal to create individual half square triangles ready to put into the block as the way that we need to construct it. So to begin for this week, we are going to start by making the corner units, and for that we need our A squares, our C squares, and our F squares. Full disclosure, while I really speed fast through constructing these 4 corner blocks, I really fouled things up. None of my sizing was right. The way that I was putting it together didn't work. I couldn't trim them down to the proper size. So I sat back, rethought about it. I've recommended cutting the sizes much larger, and then we can trim the block down to perfection. So without much further ado, let's get to the actual construction of these corner units. My name is Kendall, and I approve this message. Okay, so where were we? Okay, we need our A squares, our C squares, and our F squares. And as I said before, for our A and C squares, we just need to cut those on the diagonal once to create half square triangles. These will then go together to create our corner blocks, and I have made these oversized in the pattern so that we can trim our blocks down to perfection. Now that we have all of our half square triangles ready, we can create one half of this block by placing everything as you see me doing here. So it will create a half square triangle in and of itself. So we're going to take these ones first of all and attach those to our square, lining up our 90-degree angle in the corner there and making sure that everything is kept straight. We'll then press that in towards our print square or our F square before attaching the half square triangle to the other side of that, making sure that we keep the orientation so that what we're looking at still forms an actual triangle and no weird shapes. Once we've attached this second one, we also will press this in towards that print fabric. Then we'll get ready to add our other half square triangle, which in this instance is that C, to the other side to complete the half square triangle unit. When going to attach our C fabric, we can find the center of that just by folding it in half carefully, being aware that that is a bias edge, and then we can use that to line up where our two pieces underneath here cross over, as you can see me doing here. They won't be exactly the same size, but they will be very close, so finding the center will just help in the accuracy of the overall block. We'll get this sewn on, we'll press out towards that fabric, and then we'll talk about how to go and trim this down. So we know that we need to trim this down to 4.5 inches in total, unfinished block size of 4.5 inches. So half of that is our 2.25 inches. And as you can see me doing here, I'm placing that 2.25 inch mark on the point where that square meets the half square triangle on the other side, making sure that I have the 45-degree line from my ruler going along that seam line. And then you can also use other reference marks on your ruler to ensure that you're lining that square on the other side there up evenly before trimming those first two sides away. Now the simple part is to just rotate this around, place our ruler back on with our measurement of 4.5 inches on those freshly cut sides. Because we lined everything up in that first step, all we have to do now is line up our 4.5 inches on those freshly cut sides and make sure that we still have our 45-degree line going along our seam line there. You can also double check that that point is still at the 2.25 inch mark, but you shouldn't need to worry. Okay, back to my original footage now, and you'll see that we do need to make 4 of those, and they're the 4 that I made really badly, so don't pay too much attention to those. Just follow those steps from before and you will have perfect units, and that's the beauty of making things oversized and trimming them down. We now need to make our square in a square units, and we do need 5 of these, taking note that one has different fabric for the sew and flip corners. So I'm choosing just to do these all with sew and flips. So what we need to do is place a sew and flip on all 4 corners with the sizing that we cut from our original cut list. As you may or may not know, my preferred method for doing these sew and flips is to use the folded corner clipper tool rather than drawing the line or any of the other methods that are out there. And to do this, we just line up our smaller square in the corner of the larger one. Pay attention to the markings on the folded corner clipper tool to slice the fabric off before we take it to the machine. We can do these all 2 at a time because they will be on opposite sides of the block, so we won't be sewing over anything, and we can get all of these done quite quickly. So once again, the square in a square block that goes in the center does have different fabrics for the sew and flips. The other 4 that go around the outside of this, in the outside rows of the block, do use the background fabric. For the center one, we are using the same contrast that we used for the large side of our half square triangles from before. So we just need to put a sew and flip on all 4 corners of all 5 of these units, and we'll be ready to start the final block construction. As our square in a square units will need to butt up against each other in the center of this block. I don't do it in this footage, I do it the other way around, but with this one that goes in the center that has the different sew and flip fabric, I would press in towards the larger square in the middle, and then for all the remaining 4 that have the background fabric, press that out towards the sew and flip corner, and that will allow for you to put them together nice and neatly when we're sewing our rows and joining our pieces. As I said, I don't do it in this footage, I do it the other way. I do this one pressing out and all 4 of the others pressing in, which is really just not very sensical. So press these ones in towards that larger square on all 4 corners, and for your other 4 where you use the background fabric, press those out towards the sew and flip corners, and that will allow for nesting when we come to sew our rows together. Okay, so remembering that I said to press the one that goes in the center of the block in towards our print fabric, and for these outside four, press out towards your sew and flips, which is the opposite of what I did for this video, and it'll allow for nice nesting inner seams when we come to sew our rows together. So we actually have all of the units that we need to make this block now, and we just need to lay it out in our 9-patch fashion. And you'll notice that the only place that we do have to worry about our intersections is on that central block, which is why that pressing is important. But don't do what I did and have all 4 of the outside ones being pressed differently. Press that middle one and you'll have nice nesting seams. Now that we have our 9-patch laid out, we just need to follow our 9-patch construction rules and start by sewing all of our vertical seams and then our horizontal seams. For this one, the pressing is a little bit different because we do have bulky intersections, particularly where the 3 in a row of our square inner squares come together. So I am pressing all my seams open for the remaining construction of this block. When it does come to matching these points, because we press things in opposite directions, we can feel with our fingers, and please excuse my dirty thumbnail there, that everything is nesting in nicely and that we can get that point and then we can pin that into place. You can also use a method called drop pin to do this, but I find that because my seam allowances are pressed in those separate directions, if I move it around with my fingers, as you saw me doing, I can get that really snugly nested in there and then secure it with that pin before we go to do the rest of our lining up. Because we are pressing open on those other seams, you do need to take care to make sure that they're lined up nice. With our last horizontal seam now sewn, and once again we will press this open to control the bulk on all of those points of our square in squares and whatnots. So this block is a little more complicated than the first 4 that we've done, and these blocks do require a little bit more precision. So as a special treat for you, in the description box below you will find a link to download foundation papers to make these blocks using foundation paper piecing. If you would like to use your Quilt to make this block, you will need the 8-inch mix and match cube. I don't own that one, so I grabbed my 6-inch mix and match cube, which will give me a finished block of 9 inches, as each of the components will finish at 3 inches while using this. So we need for this block shapes 2, which is the small square, shape 3, which is the large half square triangles, shape 5, which are the small half square triangles, and shape 6, which is the square in a square die. As I said, mine will finish at 9 inches using these and not the 12 inches as we are using in the sampler. But them's the breaks. I just thought I would give this demonstration, and I have in the description box below links to all of the AccuQuilt products that you can purchase. Using these links, I will get a very small commission from AccuQuilt if you decide to go ahead and use my links to purchase. Thank you so much. When using the AccuQuilt, you do need to rough cut your fabrics first, and a lot of people think that that leads to a lot of waste. It is no more waste than if you were to cut this with a rotary cutter, because you still would have little straggly bits left over from straightening up your fabric, from trimming down your half square triangles, etc., etc. And then we just crank it through as you see me doing here, and you can do up to 6 layers of fabric. As I only need 4 of these small squares, I do only have 1 layer of fabric on the cutting die at the moment. But when I come to cut the quarter square triangles that will go around the outside of my square in a square, I do actually put 6 layers on the die and pass those all through. I won't make you watch while I put this whole thing together, so I've just done these first couple. So we do need to make another 4 of the square in square, and we do need another 3 of these corner units to make the entire block. So we'll go ahead and get those done, and I've got a few more quick tips for you coming up. As I did indicate in last week's video, when I am using the AccuQuilt or the From Marty Michelle templates, I do press all of my seam allowances open, and that's just what works for me for the accuracy. Now you will notice, again, because I was using the 6-inch cube and not the 8-inch cube, that my pieces are a lot smaller. So I'll finish constructing this. We'll touch briefly on the Marty Michelle templates, and our video for this week will be finished. If you own the From Marty Michelle templates for this one, you will need templates 9, 10, 12, and 13, as you see me laying this out here. And then this just goes together in exactly the same way as both of the others that you have seen. So now the question is, am I making 3 quilts? Let me know in the comments below if you want me to continue showing you the Marty Michelle templates as we go through. Regardless, I'll be making both versions anyway. But let me know in the comments below if you would like to continue seeing the Marty Michelle templates being used. And as per last week, here is what this block looks like on repeat, and I did add in the extra sashing and cornerstones because if you rotate this block, it still looks exactly the same. Thanks for joining me for another week, folks. This week's block was really quite interesting, and I hope you appreciate that I have supplied some foundation papers for you for those square and a square blocks and those corner blocks, because they can be tricky to do. If you haven't done so already, I'd love for you to like the video, share it with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already done so, but most importantly, tickle that little bell icon and you'll be notified of all my upcoming videos and you won't miss a thing. I'll see you all again real soon. Bye for now.